The ground shook as another explosion rocked the crystal forest of Velthora. Captain Lee Minho pressed his back against a massive blue crystal tree and checked his rifle. The power cell showed only 20% charge left. Not good. Not good. At all. Command. This is Minho. Do you copy? He whispered into his comm device. Static filled his earpiece. T tried again. Any coalition forces? This is Captain Lee Minho. I need immediate extraction. Still nothing but static. The sounds of battle grew distant behind him. His unit had been forced to retreat when the Krillian Empire launched their surprise attack 3 hours ago. During the chaos, Minho had gotten separated from his squad. Now he was alone in hostile territory with limited supplies and no way to contact his people. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead where shrapnel had grazed him. His left shoulder ached from diving behind cover too many times. T was alive. That was more than he could say for many of his fellow soldiers. Minho looked around the strange forest. The trees here were not really trees at all. They were enormous crystals that grew from the ground like giant blue and purple pillars. Some were as thick as ancient oak trees back on Earth. Others were thin as bamboo, but twice as tall. When the wind blew through them, they made a haunting, musical sound that sent chills down his spine. The local coalition forces had told him stories about this place. They called it the Singing Forest, Lou, but they also warned him about what lay deeper in the woods. Something that made even the bravest alien warriors refuse to enter. Sacred Guardian, they had whispered. Death incarnate. Monster of legends. Had laughed at their superstitions then. He was not laughing now. His stomach growled. Had not eaten since morning, and the sun was already setting behind the crystal canopy. Purple and gold light filtered through the translucent trees, casting dancing shadows on the forest floor. Beautiful, but also creepy. He needed to find shelter for the night. The temperature on Velterra dropped quickly after dark, and he had lost his thermal pack during the retreat. Moving deeper into the forest seemed like a bad idea, but staying in the open was worse. The Trillian patrols would find him eventually. Minho started walking, keeping low and moving as quietly as possible. The crystal trees grew thicker as he went deeper. Soon he could barely see the sky through their branches. The musical sound they made grew louder too, almost like a choir of ghostly voices. After an hour of careful walking, he saw something that made him stop. Through the trees ahead, he could see stone walls covered in strange symbols, some kind of building, maybe ruins. As he got closer, Minho realized it was much bigger than he first thought. The walls were at least 30 feet high and made of black stone that seemed to absorb light. Ancient symbols covered every surface, glowing with a faint blue light. The building looked like a temple from Earth's ancient civilizations, but alien, in ways that made his mind struggle to understand what he was seeing. A massive archway led into the temple's main entrance. The opening was big enough for a tank to drive through. Whatever had built this place, they were much larger than humans. Minez hesitated. Every instinct told him to stay away, but he was tired, hurt, and running out of options. The temple would provide shelter from the cold night air. Maybe he could find something useful inside. He approached the entrance slowly, rifle ready. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse brighter as he got closer. The air felt thick and heavy, like before a thunderstorm. Thick damn, but there was something else too. A smell, musky and wild, like a zoo or a forest where large animals lived. "Hello?" he called softly. His voice echoed in the darkness beyond the archway. "Anyone there?" No answer, but he heard something else. A low, rumbling sound, like a big cat purring, or maybe growling. He could not tell which. Minho stepped through the archway. The inside of the temple was even more impressive than the outside. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, supported by massive columns covered in the same glowing symbols. The floor was made of smooth stone that reflected the blue light like water. At the far end of the main chamber stood a raised platform with what looked like an altar. More symbols covered the walls around it, these ones glowing brighter than the others. But Minho's attention was drawn to something else entirely. There, lying on the platform like a giant cat on a warm rock, was the most incredible creature he had ever seen. It was huge, bigger than any animal on earth. Its body was like a panther's, but stretched to the size of a small bus. 6 legs instead of 4, each ending in claws that looked like they could cut through steel. Its hide was covered in scales that shifted color from deep blue to purple to silver, creating patterns that seemed to move in the dim light. The creature's head was massive, with a short muzzle full of teeth that gleamed like ivory daggers. 2 large ears swiveled toward him as he entered, and eyes like burning stars fixed on his face. A thick mane of what looked like fur, but moved like water, flowed around its neck and shoulders. This had to be the sacred guardian the aliens had warned him about. Kata, the monster that had killed entire battalions of soldiers. Kata and Karna of local legend. Minho should have run. Every survival instinct screamed at him to turn around and flee into the forest. But something stopped him. The creature was not moving aggressively. It was just watching him with those incredible eyes. And now that he was closer, he could see something else. The creature was hurt. A deep gash ran along its right side, starting behind one of its front legs and extending almost to its hip. The wound looked infected, with dark fluid seeping from the edges. The creature's breathing was labored, and it held that side of its body carefully, like it was trying not to cause more pain, despite its fearsome appearance, despite the legends and warnings. Minho felt a surge of sympathy. This magnificent creature was suffering. It was alone in this ancient temple, guarding something that probably no longer mattered, nursing wounds that were slowly killing it. "Hey there, big guy," Minho said softly, lowering his rifle. "You don't look so good." The creature's ears twitched at the sound of his voice. Its eyes never left his face, but the expression in them seemed to change, less wary, more curious. Minho took a step closer, then another. The creature watched, but did not move to attack. Up close, he could see that its scales were not hard like a reptile's. They looked soft, almost fluffy. Combined with the thick mane around its neck, it looked more like a giant stuffed animal than a terrifying monster. "Alana," Nino said, sitting down on the temple floor about 10 feet away from the platform. "You remind me of my old cat back home. Big and fluffy, and probably think you're tougher than you really are." The creature made a sound that was definitely a purr, deep and rumbling like distant thunder, but unmistakably the sound of a contented cat. Its eyes closed halfway, and its massive head lowered slightly toward Minho. "Yeah, that's what I thought." Minho smiled despite everything. "You're not so scary after all, are you, Fluffy?" The creature's ears perked up at the name. It cocked its head to one side, studying the human with obvious intelligence. Captain Lee Minho had found his shelter for the night, and maybe, just maybe, he had found something else too. Something that would change everything about this war, and about humanity's place in the galaxy. But first, he needed to do something about that wound. Minho spent the first hour just sitting on the temple floor, watching Fluffy and letting the creature get used to his presence. The massive beast had not moved from his position on the platform, but his eyes followed every movement Minho made. The purring had stopped, replaced by careful, quiet breathing. "I bet you haven't seen a human before," Minho said softly. "We're pretty new to this part of the galaxy. Just showed up about 5 years ago and started making friends with everyone." He chuckled. "Well, trying to make friends anyway." Fluffy's ears twitched at the sound of his voice. The creature seemed to like when he talked. Its breathing became more relaxed, and those burning star eyes looked less wary as the night grew darker. Minho could see that Fluffy's wound was worse than he first thought. The infection was spreading, causing the scales around the injury to lose their beautiful color. Dark fluid continued to seep from the gash, and he could smell the sour scent of infected tissue. "You know what, Fluffy? I think you need help more than I do right now." Minho slowly reached for his medical kit. "I'm going to try something, but you have to trust me, okay?" The creature watched as Minho pulled out his field medical supplies. He had antiseptic bandages and pain medication meant for humans, not exactly designed for alien creatures, but it was better than nothing. "This might sting a little," Minho warned, holding up the bottle of antiseptic, "but it will help you feel better." He stood up slowly and took a step toward the platform. Fluffy tensed, muscles rippling under those beautiful scales. But the creature did not growl or show its teeth. It just watched another step. Then another. Minho kept talking in soft, calm tones, the way he used to talk to scared animals back on Earth. "That's it, big guy. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to help." When he reached the platform, Fluffy lowered its massive head until they were at eye level. It's close. Minho could see the intelligence in those star-bright eyes. This was not just an animal. This creature was smart, maybe smarter than some humans he knew. "You understand me, don't you?" Minho whispered. "You know I'm trying to help." Fluffy made a soft sound, almost like a sigh. Then, to Minho's amazement, the creature carefully shifted its body to expose the wounded side. It was like a dog rolling over to show its belly, a sign of complete trust. "Well, I'll be damned," Minho breathed. "You really are something special, King." Slowly and carefully, Minho began to clean the wound. The antiseptic made Fluffy flinch, but the creature stayed still. Those powerful claws that could cut through steel remained sheathed. The massive jaws that could crush a tank stayed closed. As he worked, Minho started to understand just how incredible this creature was. The wound was deep, but it was healing in a way that seemed almost impossible. New tissue was growing at the edges, and the infection was already starting to clear just from the basic cleaning. "You heal fast," Minho observed, "much faster than humans. But you've been alone here for a long time, haven't you? There's come no one to help you take care of yourself?" Fluffy's response was a low, sad sound that made Minho's heart ache. Okay, the creature was lonely. Maybe it had been alone for years, or even decades, guarding this empty temple with no one to talk to, no one to care if it lived or died. "Well, you're not alone anymore," Minho said firmly, "at least not tonight." He finished cleaning the wound and applied a large bandage. It looked ridiculous on the massive creature, like putting a small band-aid on an elephant, but it would help keep the wound clean while it healed. "There," Minho said, stepping back. "That should feel better." Fluffy stretched carefully, testing the movement. The creature's eyes widened, and it made a pleased, rumbling sound. The pain was clearly reduced. "Good boy," Minho smiled. "Or girl. I'm not really sure which you are." He paused. "Do you even have genders like humans do? This is all very confusing." Fluffy tilted its head, and Minho could swear the creature was amused by his confusion. They spent the rest of the night together. Minho shared his emergency rations with Fluffy, who sniffed the food carefully before eating it with surprising delicacy. For such a massive creature, Fluffy was remarkably gentle. Those huge claws handled the small food packets like a human, handling flower petals. In return, Fluffy shared its warmth. The creature's body temperature was higher than a human's, and lying next to it was better than any sleeping bag. Minho dozed fitfully, one hand resting on Fluffy's soft scales, listening to the steady rhythm of the creature's breathing. Dawn came with the sound of aircraft engines overhead. Minho woke instantly, his soldier training kicking in. Coalition. Search and rescue. They had found his comm signal. "Captain Lee Minho, this is Commander Park Ji-won. please respond. Scum device crackled to life. Minho grabbed the device. Commander, this is Minho. I'm alive and mostly uninjured. Thank God, came the relieved voice. What's your location? Minho looked around the temple. I'm in some kind of ancient temple, about 10 clicks southeast of our last position. A teen. Crystal Forest. There was a long pause. Did you say the Crystal Forest? Minho, you need to get out of there, right now. That place is dangerous. It's okay, Commander. I'm safe. No, you don't understand. Intelligence reports say there's some kind of monster in that area. A creature that has killed entire squads of soldiers. The locals call it the Sacred Guardian. Minho looked at Fluffy, who was stretching lazily in the morning light. The creature's scales sparkled like jewels, and its thick mane caught the sunlight like spun gold. Yeah, about that. ... Minho, we're coming to get you. Stay hidden and don't make any noise. We'll have you out of there in 20 minutes. Commander, I need to tell you something first. ... But the comm channel had gone dead. Minho sighed. This was going to be interesting. 20 minutes later, the sound of boots on stone echoed through the temple. Minho stood up from where he had been sitting next to Fluffy, who watched the entrance with curious eyes. Minho. Commander Park Ji-won appeared in the archway, followed by Dr. Kim Sora and Sergeant Choi Daeho. All three stopped dead when they saw the massive creature lounging on the platform. Holy shit, Daeho whispered, raising his rifle. Wait, Minho said quickly, stepping between his teammates and Fluffy. Don't shoot. It's friendly. Dr. Kim stared at the creature in amazement. Minho, that's the most dangerous predator on this planet. It's killed hundreds of soldiers. I don't think so, Minho said. I think it's just been protecting its home, okay? And it's been doing it alone for a very long time. Fluffy made a soft, chuffing sound and lowered its head toward Minho. The creature's massive tongue, rough like sandpaper, but gentle as a feather, licked the side of Minho's face. Commander Park's mouth fell open. It likes you. Yeah, Minho grinned, scratching behind Fluffy's ear. The creature's purr filled the temple like distant thunder. I think we're friends. Dr. Kim stepped forward slowly, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. This is impossible. According to all reports, this creature is completely hostile to any intelligent life. Maybe it was just waiting for someone to be nice to it, Minho suggested. Fluffy's eyes fixed on Dr. Kim, and the creature tilted its head curiously. It made a questioning sound, like a cat meowing. I think it's trying to communicate, Dr. Kim breathed. The intelligence readings are off the charts. This creature is as smart as any coalition species. Smarter, Minho corrected. It's understood that I was trying to help before I even started. It knew I wasn't a threat. Commander Park lowered her weapon. Minho, what exactly happened here? I found a friend, Minho said, simply. And I think this friend might be able to help us win this war. Fluffy stretched and yawned, showing off teeth that could bite through armor plating. Then it settled back down and began grooming its mane, completely unconcerned by the armed humans in its temple. This changes everything, Dr. Kim whispered. If we can establish communication with the indigenous species, if we can make allies instead of just fighting. One step at a time, Commander Park said. First, we need to get everyone back to base safely. Okay. Then we figure out what this means. Minho looked at Fluffy, who was watching him with those incredible star-bright eyes. What do you say, big guy? Want to come with us? Fluffy stood up, stretched again, and walked over to Minho. The creature was even more impressive, standing up, towering over all of them like a living mountain. But when it looked at Minho, its expression was gentle and trusting. I'll take that as a yes, Minho laughed. The war was about to change in ways none of them could imagine. Getting Fluffy back to the Coalition base was not easy. The creature was too big for any of their transport vehicles, and nobody wanted to explain to headquarters why they needed a cargo ship for a pet. In the end, Fluffy simply walked alongside their hover vehicles, keeping pace easily with his long, powerful legs. The other soldiers at the base reacted exactly as expected when they saw Minho riding on Fluffy's back through the main gate. Some screamed, others fainted. Most just stared in shock as the legendary monster that had terrorized the region for decades trotted into their camp like a giant, friendly dog. "This is insane," muttered Lieutenant Han Yuna from the communications tower. "That thing could eat half the base for breakfast. It's not going to eat anyone." Minho called up to her. "Fluffy is friendly. You named the sacred guardian Fluffy." Lieutenant Han shook her head. "Humans are completely crazy." General Morrison, the Coalition base commander, was a tough old bird who had seen 3 wars and thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. When Minho walked into his office, followed by a creature the size of a small building, the general's cigar fell out of his mouth. "Captain Lee," the general said slowly, "would you mind explaining why there is a legendary death machine in my office?" "Sir, I'd like to request permission to train Fluffy as a combat mount," Minho said. "I believe he could give us a significant tactical advantage." The general stared at him. "A combat mount? You want to ride the Sacred Guardian into battle today?" "Yes, sir." "The creature that has supposedly killed entire battalions of soldiers?" "Yes, sir." "I don't think those stories are true. I think Fluffy was just protecting his territory. Now that he's bonded with me, he wants to help." Fluffy, as if understanding the conversation, sat down next to Minho and made a soft, chirping sound. The general's desk groaned under the weight of the creature's massive paw when Fluffy placed it there in what looked like a friendly gesture. "Dear God," the general whispered, "it's like a giant kitten." "Sir, with respect, we're losing this war," Minho said. "The Krillian Empire has better weapons, more ships, and more soldiers. We need something they don't expect, something that can change the game." The general looked at Fluffy, who was now purring loud enough to make the windows vibrate. "How do we know it won't turn on us?" "Because it already had the chance to kill me, and it chose to trust me instead," Minho said simply. "Fluffy could have ended me in seconds, but instead he let me help him. That's not the behavior of a mindless monster." Dr. Kim entered the office, carrying a tablet full of readings. "General, the intelligence tests are remarkable. This creature shows problem-solving abilities equal to or exceeding most Coalition species. It's not just smart, it's brilliant. And it likes humans," Minho added. "Specifically, it likes me, but it's starting to warm up to the others too." As if to prove his point, Fluffy turned his massive head toward Dr. Kim and made a questioning sound. When she held out her hand, the creature sniffed it carefully, then gave her fingers a gentle lick. "Fascinating," Dr. Kim breathed. "It's showing classic bonding behavior. In the wild, this species might form pack bonds with other intelligent creatures." "Pack bonds," the general repeated. "You're talking about turning a legend into a soldier." "I'm talking about making a friend into an ally," Minho corrected, "and maybe saving a lot of lives in the process." The general was quiet for a long moment. Outside, alarms were sounding as Krillian scouts tested their defenses again. The war was getting worse every day. "Fine," the general said finally. "You have 2 weeks to prove this crazy idea works. But if that creature hurts anyone, even accidentally, this experiment ends immediately." "Thank you, sir. You won't regret this." "I already regret this," the general muttered. "I'm putting a monster in our military because a human asked nicely. My grandfather would roll over in his grave." The next 2 weeks were unlike anything anyone at the base had ever experienced. Minho started training Fluffy every morning at dawn. beginning with simple commands and gradually working up to more complex maneuvers. The creature was an incredibly fast learner. Within 3 days, Fluffy understood basic commands like stop, go, left, and right. Within a week, he was responding to hand signals and even seemed to understand tactical concepts like flanking and cover. It's like he was born for this, Minho told Dr. Kim after a particularly successful training session. He understands strategy better than some human soldiers I've known. But Fluffy also showed his personality during training. The creature had definite opinions about things. He refused to wear any kind of saddle, preferring to let Minho hold onto his thick mane. He would not work if he was hungry, no matter how much Minho coaxed him. And he had developed a habit of knocking over equipment when he was bored. He's like a giant cat, Sergeant Choi Daeho observed after Fluffy had knocked over a stack of supply crates for the 3rd time that day. Beautiful, deadly, and completely convinced that he owns the place. All cats think they own everything, Minho laughed. The difference is that Fluffy is actually big enough to back it up. Sergeant Choi had become Fluffy's second favorite human, mostly because he had started bringing the creature exotic foods from the base kitchen. Fluffy had a weakness for anything sweet, and Choi had discovered that the creature went crazy for honey cakes. I never thought I'd be bribing a legendary monster with desserts, Choi admitted as he watched Fluffy carefully eat a honey cake without getting any crumbs on the ground. But here we are. The other soldiers gradually got used to having Fluffy around. The creature was surprisingly gentle for something so massive. He learned to be careful around the smaller humans, moving slowly and keeping his claws sheathed when he was near them. Lieutenant Han Yuna had been skeptical at first, but she changed her mind when Fluffy saved her from a falling piece of equipment. The creature had moved faster than lightning, catching the heavy metal beam in his jaws before it could crush her. Okay, she admitted afterward. Maybe having a giant protective monster around isn't such a bad thing. Dr. Kim spent hours studying Fluffy's behavior and abilities. She discovered that the creature's scales could change color for camouflage. They could see in complete darkness. His hearing was so acute he could detect enemy aircraft long before human equipment picked them up. He's not just a mount, she told Minho excitedly. He's a living sensor array. He can detect things we can't even imagine. As the 2 weeks progressed, Minho and Fluffy became more than just rider and mount. They developed an almost telepathic connection. Fluffy seemed to know what Minho wanted before he asked for it. In return, Minho learned to read the creature's moods and needs. It's like they're 2 parts of the same warrior, observed Commander Park during one of their training sessions. Never seen anything like it. The final test came at the end of the 2 weeks. General Morrison had set up a complex obstacle course that would test both Fluffy's physical abilities and his tactical thinking. The course included barriers to jump, targets to hit, and a mock enemy position to infiltrate. Minho climbed onto Fluffy's back, feeling the familiar warmth of the creature's scales beneath him. Ready, big guy? Fluffy's response was a deep, rumbling purr that Minho felt in his bones. The creature's muscles tensed, ready to spring into action. Begin the test. The general announced. What happened next took everyone's breath away. Fluffy moved through the obstacle course like liquid lightning, his massive body flowing over barriers and around obstacles with impossible grace. His color-changing scales made him nearly invisible as he approached the mock enemy position. When they reached the targets, Fluffy's precision was stunning. He could hit objects smaller than a human fist with his claws, moving so fast that the targets were destroyed before anyone could see how he did it. The infiltration of the mock enemy position was a masterpiece of stealth and strategy. Fluffy used his natural camouflage to become nearly invisible, while Minho directed him to weak points in the defenses. They completed the entire course in half the time anyone had expected. Incredible, the general breathed. How did you do that? We didn't do it, Minho said, sliding down from Fluffy's back. We did it together. That's the difference. Fluffy nuzzled Minho's shoulder affectionately, then turned to face the assembled soldiers. The creatures' scales shifted to their normal, beautiful blue and purple, and he made a sound that was unmistakably proud, while the general said, "I guess we have ourselves a new weapon." "Not a weapon," Minho corrected gently, "a partner." That night, as Minho sat with Fluffy under the stars, he could see the lights of Krillian ships in the distance. The final battle was coming, and soon they would put their partnership to the ultimate test. "What do you think, Fluffy?" Minho asked, scratching behind the creature's ears, ready to show the galaxy what we can do. Fluffy's answer was a rumbling purr that seemed to shake the very ground beneath them. The creature's eyes gleamed with intelligence and determination. They were ready. The attack came at dawn. Krillian Empire ships darkened the sky like a swarm of metal insects, their weapons charging with an ominous hum that made the ground vibrate. General Morrison stood in the command center, watching the enemy forces on his screens with growing dread. "Sir, we count over 200 enemy vessels," reported Lieutenant Han Yuna. "They have 3 battle cruisers and at least 50 ground assault mechs." "How many do we have?" a general asked, though he already knew the answer would not be good. 40 ships, sir, and most of those are fighters, not heavy combat vessels." The general closed his eyes. They were outnumbered 5 to 1. This was not a battle. This was about to be a massacre. "Sir," Commander Park's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain Lee and his partner are requesting permission to join the fight." The general looked out the window. In the distance, he could see Minho sitting on Fluffy's back near the base perimeter. The massive creature's scales were already shifting to camouflage colors, making him blend with the rocky terrain. "Permission granted," the general said. "God help us all." The first wave of Krillian fighters screamed overhead, their energy weapons turning sections of the base into smoking craters. Coalition forces scrambled to return fire, but their smaller guns barely scratched the enemy's heavy armor. Minho felt Fluffy tense beneath him as the first explosions rocked the base. The creature's ears were flat against his head, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. "I know, big guy," Minho said, patting Fluffy's neck. "I don't like it either. But we're going to stop them." Fluffy's response was a roar that shook the ground for half a mile in every direction. The sound was unlike anything the Krillian pilots had ever heard. Several of their fighters wobbled in the air as their pilots tried to figure out what could make such a noise. "Let's go," Minho whispered. Fluffy launched himself forward with explosive power. His 6 legs carried him across the battlefield faster than any vehicle, his claws finding purchase on rocks and metal debris. Within seconds, they were among the enemy ground forces. The first Krillian soldiers to see them thought they were hallucinating, a human riding a creature from local legend. Impossible. But their disbelief lasted only moments before Fluffy's claws tore through their battle armor like paper. "Contact," radioed Sergeant Choi from his position near the main gate. "Min-Ho and Fluffy are engaging the enemy's eastern flank." "How are they doing?" Commander Park asked. Choi watched through his binoculars as Fluffy leaped over a tank, landed behind it, and bit through its main gun barrel. "They're terrifying the hell out of the Krillians, ma'am." Fluffy's natural abilities were perfectly suited for warfare. His color-changing scales made him nearly invisible until he attacked. His incredible speed let him strike and disappear before the enemy could react. And his intelligence meant he understood tactics better than most military computers. But it was his partnership with Minho that made them truly devastating. The human's tactical knowledge, combined with the creature's physical abilities, created something neither could achieve alone. 3 o'clock, Minho called out. Spotting a group of enemy soldiers trying to flank their position, Fluffy spun to face the threat without Minho having to explain what he meant. The creature's enhanced senses had already detected the enemies, but he waited for his human partner's confirmation before acting. They moved together like dancers, each knowing exactly what the other would do. When Minho leaned left, Fluffy turned left. When the creature crouched to spring, Minho automatically shifted his weight to stay balanced. "This is impossible," muttered a Krillian commander, watching his forces scatter before the human and creature team. "How is one mount causing this?" "Much damage, sir? Should we call for air support?" asked his aide. "Against one target. Don't be ridiculous." But as more of his ground forces fell to Fluffy's claws and Minho's precise rifle fire, the commander started to reconsider. This was not just one target. This was something that was changing the entire flow of battle. Coalition forces, seeing the chaos Minho and Fluffy were causing in the enemy ranks, began to rally. Soldiers who had been ready to retreat suddenly found their courage. If a human and his partner could take on the entire Krillian army, then maybe they could win this fight. "All units, advance," Commander Park ordered. "Follow Captain Lee's lead." Lieutenant Han coordinated air support from her position in the communications tower. "Fluffy's causing so much confusion that our fighters can attack without being targeted," she reported excitedly. "Krillians don't know where to look." Dr. Kim, watching from a safe distance, was taking notes as fast as she could write. "The psychological impact is incredible," she said into her recorder. "The enemy forces are acting like they are facing an army instead of two individuals." Fluffy seemed to understand that they were having an effect beyond just their immediate combat power. The creature began to roar more often, each bellow causing visible panic among the Krillian ranks. His scales flashed brighter colors, making him more visible and more intimidating. "He's showing off." Minho laughed as Fluffy performed an impossible leap over 3 enemy tanks. "You like having an audience, don't you, big guy?" Fluffy's response was a purr that somehow managed to sound smug. The battle raged for hours. Krillian reinforcements kept arriving, but they found themselves facing not just coalition forces, but a legend come to life. Stories of the Sacred Guardian had spread through their ranks over the years, and now that legend was fighting against them. "Sir, the Eastern Assault Group is requesting immediate extraction," reported a Krillian communications officer. "They say they're being hunted by a monster." "A monster?" The Krillian admiral frowned. "What kind of monster?" "They describe it as the size of a small building with 6 legs and the ability to become invisible. And sir, they say it has a human rider." The admiral stared at his aide. "A human rider on a creature the size of a building?" "Yes, sir. It's multiple units are reporting the same thing." "Show me." The main screen flickered to life, showing battlefield footage from one of their remaining cameras. The admiral watched in stunned silence as a massive creature materialized from seemingly empty air, destroyed 2 of his best tanks, and vanished again. "What in the name of the void is that thing?" he whispered. "Local legends call it the Sacred Guardian, sir. But according to our intelligence, it was supposed to be hostile to all life forms." "Well, it's certainly hostile to us." The admiral studied the screen. "But why is it working with the humans?" The answer came a moment later as the camera caught a clear shot of Minho on Fluffy's back. The human was grinning as he guided his partner through a complex attack that destroyed an entire enemy squad. "He's enjoying this," the admiral said in disbelief. "The human is actually having fun." "Sir, what are your orders?" The admiral was quiet for a long moment. His forces were being systematically destroyed by 1 human and 1 creature. It's humiliating beyond belief. "Pull back all ground forces," he finally ordered. "Prepare for orbital bombardment." "Sir, that will destroy everything in the area, including our own troops." "Better than being defeated by a pet," the admiral snarled. On the ground, Minho felt Fluffy's muscles tense suddenly. The creature's head snapped up toward the sky, his ears rotating to catch sounds that human equipment could not detect. "What is it, boy?" Minho asked. Fluffy's answer was a worried whine. The creature's enhanced senses had detected the charging of orbital weapons high above the atmosphere. Lieutenant Han, Minho called into his comm. "We need to evacuate the base immediately. They're going to bombard us from orbit." "How do you know that?" Han's voice crackled back. "Fluffy can hear their weapons charging. We have maybe 10 minutes before they fire. 10 minutes to evacuate an entire base." Commander Park's voice joined the channel. "That's impossible." Minho looked down at Fluffy, who was already moving toward the base at full speed. "Maybe not impossible, just really, really difficult." As they raced against time to save their friends, Minho realized that this battle was far from over. Krillians were about to learn that when you threaten a human's friends, you make that human very dangerous indeed. And when you make a human angry, you also make their six-legged partner angry. Okay? And an angry Fluffy was something the galaxy had never seen before. "Hold on tight, big guy," Minho said grimly. "Okay, this is about to get interesting." Part 5. Sacred Bond. Legendary victory. The evacuation alarm screamed across the base as coalition forces scrambled to escape the coming orbital bombardment. Soldiers ran in every direction, grabbing essential equipment and wounded comrades. But 10 minutes was not enough time to save everyone. "We're not going to make it," Commander Park said grimly as she watched the evacuation progress. "Too many people, not enough transport." Minho and Fluffy raced through the base, the massive creature moving with impossible grace between buildings and vehicles. Fluffy's enhanced hearing tracked the orbital weapons above, and his nervous whines told Minho they were running out of time fast. "Lieutenant Han," Minho called over the comm. "How many people are still in the base?" "About 200, sir." "We can't get them all out in time." Ho looked up at the sky where he could barely see the dark shapes of Krillian ships, positioning for bombardment. Then he looked at Fluffy, whose intelligent eyes seemed to understand exactly what was happening. "What do you think, big guy? Can we stop them?" Fluffy's response was a roar that made the ground shake. The creature's scales shifted to their brightest colors, no longer trying to hide. This was not a time for stealth. This was a time to make a statement. "Minho, what are you planning?" Kana's voice came through the comm from the evacuation convoy. "Something crazy," Minho admitted. "Fluffy and I are going to take out their orbital platform." The silence on the comm channel was deafening. "Minho," General Morrison's voice finally crackled through. "That platform is in space. You can't reach it." "Maybe not directly," Minho said, studying the enemy formation. "A T, but I have an idea." The largest Krillian ship, the one preparing to fire the orbital bombardment, was hovering just above the atmosphere. IT was too high for conventional aircraft to reach, but it was also lower than it should be. The Admiral wanted to watch his victory personally. That was going to be his mistake. "Fluffy," Minho said softly, "I need you to do something that's going to sound impossible. Can you jump that high?" Fluffy looked up at the ship, then back at Minho. The creature made a thoughtful sound as if calculating distance and physics in his head. Then he nodded, actually nodded, like a human would. "I thought so." Minho grinned. "Let's show them what impossible looks like." Fluffy crouched low, his massive muscles coiling like springs. His scales began to glow brighter, and energy seemed to build around him. Minho had never seen the creature do anything like this before. "All units, get clear of the launch area," Minho ordered. "Fluffy's about to do something amazing." The creature's roar this time was different. It was not just sound, but energy. The very air around them began to shimmer, and Minho felt a tingling sensation like electricity dancing across his skin. "Incredible," Dr. Kim breathed from the convoy. building up some kind of bioelectric charge. The energy readings are off the charts. Fluffy's muscles released like a coiled spring, but this was more than just a jump. Energy exploded from his body, launching them upward with the force of a rocket. The ground cracked beneath them from the sheer power of his leap. They shot into the sky like a living missile, climbing higher and higher. The air grew thin, and Minho felt his lungs straining for oxygen. But Fluffy's scales had formed a protective barrier around them, somehow creating a pocket of breathable air. "This is impossible," the Krillian admiral whispered as he watched a creature and rider rise toward his ship like something out of a nightmare. "Nothing can jump that high. Sir, should we fire?" asked his weapons officer. "With what?" the admiral snarled. "Our orbital weapons are designed to target planets, not individual creatures." They reached the peak of their impossible leap, just as they drew level with the massive Krillian battleship. For a moment, they hung in space like a painting, human and creature silhouetted against the stars. Then Fluffy's claws extended, and they crashed into the ship's hull like a living torpedo. The creature's claws, which could cut through tank armor, tore through the ship's hull plating like tissue paper. His bioelectric energy discharged in a massive pulse that fried every electronic system within 50 meters. "Hull breach on deck 7, reported a panicked Krillian officer. "Something's inside the ship." "What do you mean, something's inside?" the admiral demanded. His answer came in the form of explosions echoing through the ship's corridors. Minho and Fluffy were moving through the vessel like an unstoppable force, destroying critical systems with surgical precision. "Target the engine room," Minho called out as they raced through the ship's passages. Fluffy needed no explanation. The creature's enhanced senses could detect the ship's power source, and he moved toward it with deadly purpose. Krillian soldiers tried to stop them, but fighting a massive creature in the narrow corridors of a spaceship was like trying to stop a hurricane with a screen door. Fluffy's scales protected him from their energy weapons, while his claws and teeth made short work of their armor. "Engine room secured," Minho reported as they burst into the ship's power core chamber, beginning demolition. What followed was less a technical sabotage and more like watching a force of nature tear apart a machine. Fluffy's claws sliced through power conduits. His bioelectric discharge overloaded control systems, and his sheer mass-crushed delicate machinery. "Sir, we're losing main power," the Krillian engineer reported desperately. "Whatever's in the engine room is destroying everything. Send all security teams," the admiral ordered. "Sir, we already did. They're not responding." The admiral stared at his tactical display as system after system went offline. His mighty battleship was being destroyed from the inside by one human and one creature. "Evacuation protocol," he finally ordered. "Abandon ship." But it was too late. As the ship's power core destabilized, Fluffy grabbed Minho and leaped clear of the vessel. Just before it exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up the sky, they fell toward the planet's surface in a controlled descent, Fluffy's bioelectric field protecting them from the heat and debris. When they landed back at the base, the entire coalition force was waiting for them. The silence stretched for long moments as everyone stared at the burning wreckage falling from the sky above them. "Did you just destroy an entire battleship?" Commander Park asked in disbelief. "Fluffy did most of the work," Minho said modestly, sliding down from the creature's back. "I just pointed him in the right direction." Fluffy preened at the attention, his scales shimmering with pride. The creature had not only saved the base, he had single-handedly ended the battle. "Sir," Lieutenant Han called from the communications center, "the remaining Krillian ships are retreating." "All of them?" General Morrison shook his head in amazement. "One human and one creature just ended an entire invasion." The news of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. The story of the human who befriended a legendary creature and rode it into space to destroy an enemy battleship became the stuff of legend. But for Minho, the real victory was simpler. He had found a friend in the most unlikely place, and together, they had saved people they cared about. "So what happens now?" Dr. Kim asked, as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Minho looked at Fluffy, who was contentedly grooming his mane. "Now we go home, but not to separate homes. We're partners now." The creature looked up at him and chirped in agreement. "The galaxy is going to be a very different place," Commander Park observed. "When word gets out about this, every human in the fleet is going to want their own legendary creature partner." "Good luck with that," Minho laughed. "There's only one Fluffy, and he's mine." Fluffy's response was to knock Minho over with an affectionate head bump, then pin him to the ground and give him a thorough face washing with his massive tongue. On second thought, Minho said, spitting out creature drool, "Maybe having a legendary partner isn't for everyone." But his grin said otherwise. He had found something precious in the ruins of an ancient temple. Not just a friend, but a bond that had changed the course of a war and would change the course of history. The human who named a sacred beast Fluffy and rode it into battle had become a legend himself. But more importantly, he had learned that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the universe is simply the courage to extend friendship to those who need it most. And sometimes, just sometimes, that friendship comes with claws, scales, and the ability to jump into space. In the years that followed, the story would be told and retold throughout the galaxy. But those who had been there would always remember the simple truth at its heart. A lonely creature and a lost human had found each other. And together they had accomplished the impossible. The sacred guardian was no longer alone, and neither was Captain Lee Minho. They were partners, friends, and legends, and that was exactly the way they liked it.